Yikes. That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt. And I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. And what do I mean by that topic? Yikes. 2 more years of Joe Biden leading America down this path of national security peril. I mean, look at what Pete Buttigieg just said about the grounding of the airlines. In essence, he said, I don't know what happened. I don't know if we've been attacked by an outside source. I don't know if it's a cyber attack. I don't know what's going on. But I do know how to breastfeed. Isn't that interesting? Of course, he didn't exactly say that in those words. It's implied. It's implied that this administration, this Joe Biden administration, is feckless on foreign policy, almost as feckless as they are on domestic policy. It's a toss-up. Every day it's like, which is Joe Biden messing up more? America's policy or foreign policy? Foreign policy or America's policy? I don't know. The scales are constantly in the balance and they're constantly wavering by just the tiniest amounts. Before I get into all that, I want to quickly mention, if you like Bold and Blunt, you can get Bold and Blunt at edify.app. That is the online platform for your faith-based podcasts. You can also get Bold and Blunt at washingtontimes.com. Why leave washingtontimes.com to go elsewhere to find Bold and Blunt when you can get it right on washingtontimes.com? Just go to the bottom of the page, find the newsletter section, click on it, find my name in the newsletter section, click on that, and guess what? Sign up for my 3 times a week newsletter. It comes out Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right to your email box. It contains all the commentaries I write all day long, all week long at the Washington Times, giving you the bullet points you need to fight the far leftists who are busily trying to crumble America. And it also contains my twice weekly Tuesdays and Thursdays Bold and Blunt podcasts with such great guests as just recently Kathy Lee Gifford and today Mike Pompeo. But first, let's talk about feckless Joe Biden once again. Top Iranian admiral says Tehran will send warships to Panama Canal. That was just a recent headline from the Washington Times. Yay! Cue applause. Yay, Team Biden. Thanks for securing America's interests, our national security interests once again. Sending warships from Iran to the Panama Canal. And guess what? Our allies around the world are cheering too. Yay, another round of applause from, say, Israel. Good job, Joe Biden. Good job. Iran is vowing to send warships this year to the Panama Canal as part of the Islamic Republic's mission to extend Tehran's military reach beyond the Middle East. Mike Glenn with the Washington Times wrote. Isn't that great? Iranian Army Navy forces are present in any ocean if needed, said a top rear admiral, commander of Iran's Navy. This is what Joe Biden gets you, okay? This and Russia, Ukraine, right, which is just lingering. Is that ever coming to an end? Is there any exit strategy here? Is there any compelling American interest to continue sending millions and millions and millions of U.S. tax dollars to support Ukraine's effort against Russia? I don't know. Maybe that reason will become evident in some sort of revelation of classified documents found in Joe Biden's bathroom in his Delaware home. Maybe we'll get some insights on why we keep sending money to Ukraine based on secret, classified, sensitive documents that are discovered, coincidentally, before the election, but only to be revealed now after the election, in Joe Biden's possession or in Joe Biden's family's possession. Tehran has been increasing its reach into Latin America in recent years. This piece goes on to say, such as engaging in economic discussions with Cuba in an apparent bid to avoid U.S. economic sanctions. So the one tool that the United States under Joe Biden, under feckless Joe Biden, likes to dangle as trying to control Iran's development of nuclear power. The one dangler, and now that's being bypassed. I just want to remind you, because sometimes in the flurry of media coverage, especially flurry of fawning Joe Biden media coverage, some may forget how we had it just a short time ago under a previous administration named Donald Trump administration. I just want to remind you that just a short time ago, we didn't have a world that was on fire, right? We didn't have Iran sending warships to the Panama Canal. We didn't have Russia, Ukraine. We didn't have China just walking and stomping all over America's greatness and seizing the world stage from America. We didn't have all that because we had someone in the White House called Donald Trump who was respected by leaders around the world. And why was he respected? Because he was a strong leader. And he didn't just run over to countries and beg for such things as oil, and at the same time put America down on the international stage. He governed by strength. And because of that, we had things like, the Abraham Accords, which the media likes to largely ignore under this current administration because it was a deal forged by a Republican administration. So according to modern media rule books, that means it has to be ignored. Now, if that had been Obama or if that had been Joe Biden who had forged the Abraham Accords, we would still be hearing about it. We would have Abraham Accords Day, and we would have Democrat governors around the nation trying to shut down schools and places of work for the day in order to honor the great deal forged by the Democrat administration. But because it was something that came by way of Donald Trump and Republicans, then, we have to ignore that and pretend it never happened. You know it. You know that's true. I know it. I know that's true. And so doesn't the media, who pushes that narrative, pushes that failure to discuss the benefits of the Abraham Accords on bringing about a peaceful, more prosperous world. We all know this is how the game is played. But seriously, if you're a Democrat out there, I really, really, really want to know how you can continue to support this present White House administration with such fecklessness as Joe Biden, as Kamala Harris, supposedly the one who was helping to control the border, right? The one put in charge of the border, with Pete Buttigieg, the transportation secretary, who does nothing in terms of transportation, except making sure his so-called husband, which I'm not going to really call a husband, I'm going to put air quotes around that, because as God defines marriage, it's between a male and a female, a man and a woman. And so to call two men living together and having sex with each other and pretending like they have a family together, to define that as a marriage and use terms like husband and husband in that sort of relationship is just wrong. It's just deceptive and wrong. So I'm going to put air quotes around that word husband. But Pete Buttigieg seems more concerned about making sure his air quote husband has flights around the world paid at taxpayer expense than he does about ensuring that you and me and the American citizens have access to the airlines, even though we bail them out. And so they're basically taxpayer owned at this point. He seems much more concerned about that than about doing his job. Yet more evidence of fecklessness in this administration. And it's getting to the point rapidly when you see stories and you see headlines about how now Iran is going to take advantage of this feckless administration, this weak administration, and expand its presence closer to U.S. soil, then red flags should start popping, even in the minds of Democrats. And I don't understand how Democrats can continue to support this administration and think that this administration is protecting Americans from enemies, both foreign and domestic. It seems to me the biggest enemy Americans face right now is within this White House. Think about that, Democrats. Think about that, independent voters. And let's be truthful and set aside politics and look at what this administration is doing in terms of weakening America on the international stage, and what that means in terms of protecting America from hostile aggressions and protecting our allies from enemies of America who would exploit the weakness in this administration to go after our allies, and therefore putting us in a position of either having to defend our allies as promised or break promises to our allies and leave them hanging. Can you say Afghanistan? So my guest today, Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State under the great Donald Trump administration, is here to weigh in on some of the things that are taking place in this administration and whether he thinks there's anything good going on that we can, once again, applaud. Mike Pompeo, thank you so much for being back on Bold and Blunt. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back on. It is great to be with you, Cheryl.
So there's so much to talk about, and I know we only have a few years, a few minutes. And I did want to start with some breaking news that's taken place in America just today with the grounding of the airlines. I wonder if you could weigh in on what you see that as the source. Are we looking at just a computer glitch or a cyber attack? And more than that, what should America be doing right now to ensure, if it is a cyber attack, we're secure?
Goodness, sure, there's a couple things. I don't know the answer, and I think the FAA has said that they're still trying to figure it out. And to date, there's no evidence of a cyber attack. Okay, fair enough. But two thoughts that follow from that. One, you should have known immediately what the cause of the challenge was. That is, you should know why it is that this system that is so important to maintaining American commerce, people traveling, all the things that really matter in America, you should be able to figure that out. Second, we know that the threat from bad actors to our central infrastructure, think of our financial infrastructure, think of our power delivery infrastructure, and certainly our aviation infrastructure is real. And the fact that this happened, the fact that the system was incapable of protecting against this, whether it turns out to have been a technical or a human error or a international bad actor, suggests that the administration simply hasn't done enough to make sure this system can continue to function even when there's an error or challenge from abroad.
Just to follow up quickly on something you said, why should they have known already? Because as I understand it, Pete Buttigieg, and systems are restored at this point, but Pete Buttigieg said that they are checking to find out the source and they're actively pursuing that. And what I'm taking is that you say they should already know that.
My experience when there were attacks from abroad, that there was a ready telltale sign almost always, some footprint,
Gotcha.
something that suggested that this wasn't just somebody flipped a switch that was shouldn't have been flipped or a piece of code that was written improperly. It was usually in very short order. Now we are 12, 14, 16 hours on. It was pretty apparent that there was an external system that drove the failure or something from inside. And they should, I would think, have the answer to that. I hope we get it yet today.
Okay. Hopefully they're just playing coy with that and it's not some deeper national security risk to the American people.
I hope that's right, too.
The Abraham Accords, and I know you've been following this closely, they've sort of stalled. The media has kind of stopped talking about the Abraham Accords, which is one of the signature successes of the Donald Trump administration, including your efforts with that. But where are you seeing Saudi Arabia? Because now we have whispers, maybe louder than whispers, that Saudi is actually moving to sign some sort of decree with Israel.
Cheryl, it was something I worked my tail off on. We got a very good outcome where we had Islamic nations, Muslim countries, Arab nations saying, yep, we no longer want to wipe Israel from the face of the earth. At its core, that's what the Abraham Accords are, right? They
Yes.
are peace agreements that are understandings that says we're going to find a way to cooperate amongst and between ourselves. This work that's been done in the last couple years between the Emirates, Morocco, Sudan, Bahrain, all those great countries that signed up for the Abraham Accords has been legion. The people of those places are better off, and so I'm unsurprised that whether it's the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia or Indonesia or Malaysia or other Gulf state Arab countries, why they too say, it's time for us to recognize Israel's right to exist as well. And it took American leadership. It will continue to take American leadership. I think that's missing today. But make no mistake about it, those countries, whether under the auspices of the Abraham Accords or otherwise, they know that their people are more secure and more prosperous if they recognize the rightful nationhood of the state of Israel.
And as you correctly point out, that America would have to take a lead on any further discussions, and yet America under this administration, under Joe Biden in particular, has really cooled relations with Saudi. So where would that leave the potential for some sort of expansion of Abraham Accords with Saudi under this current administration?
I just think it makes it harder. If you're the leadership in a country that's trying to make the decision, you want to know that if there's a tough day or something hard happens, you want to know that you have American support. I don't think anyone has confidence that the Biden administration would do that. And there's evidence to support their concerns. This is a set of leaders in the White House today that have cozied up to the world's largest state sponsor of terror, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the country that is today providing weapon systems to kill to the Russians, to kill Ukrainian civilians. And yet Rob Malley, Susan Rice, and the gang in the White House all say, no, if we can just get a deal with these leaders in Iran, life will be better. If you are a Gulf state leader, you are an Israeli leader, you're a European leader, you should see the folly of this. So your point is well taken. When America is trying to cozy up, under American leadership, trying to cozy up with the Iranians, the chance of the Abraham Accords expanding is much, much lower.
Yeah, it just seems a direct conflict to smoothing relations. But speaking of Iran, Iran really does not like you that much. So much, in fact, that this administration just again extended protections for you against Iran. You and one of your administrators, I believe. I can't remember his name.
Yes, Brian Hook.
Yes.
Look, the Iranian leadership understands that the people of Iran are not with them. And so whatever they can do to create an external foe, whether that's me or someone on my team or America itself, that drives, it deflects from what they're doing to their own people. But the Iranian people aren't going to stand for that forever. I'm convinced that the leadership of the Islamic Republic of Iran, that regime, is on borrowed time. And it can't come soon enough for the Iranian people that they can have the basic freedoms, the capacity to self-govern, the absence of corruption, the theocracy, the external terror that the Iranian leadership spends all its money on. That will go away, and the Iranian people will once again get to be self-governing and have a nation-state that can be part of the community of nations.
So what can America do to help that go away? Should we be using intel, CIA resources to sort of crumble the governing structure there to allow the people to grow their own quest for freedoms? Is that the best we could do for Iran?
Sure. In the end, there's really a couple things. One, what we did was we tried to starve the regime from resources, the resources that they use to put precision-guided missiles around the world that can put our Israeli partners and friends at risk, the resources they use to conduct terror and assassination campaigns around the world, so that we can't. So taking away their resources, also resources they use to oppress their own people. And second, then we can, the whole world, America can lead, but the whole world make it very clear that this is not a legitimate regime, that this regime is inflicting enormous costs on people all across the world now, including Ukrainian civilians, and the world can unite to support the Iranian people in their quest to have the basic freedoms that they deserve. Those are the things that nations can do. We ought to do them. We did them incredibly well for 4 years in my time as CIA Director and Secretary of State, and within hours, the Biden administration flipped that policy on its head. It's dangerous for the Gulf and Arab states. It's dangerous for Israel, and it's bad for the American people, too.
It's very dangerous, and it flipped in just a few short hours. So let me ask you this. What chance does Iran have to realize its nuclear development goals before the end of this administration? Because let's be real, we can talk about best management practices for Iran in terms of America, but that's not going to happen under this administration.
No, look, the regime thinks they have America on its back foot.
Right.
That's absolutely sure. They have enhanced their capability to enrich uranium, and each have enriched uranium at levels that I just can't imagine they would have happened when I was in office. And then they have the second piece of that, which is the nuclear weapons leg. They're going to go as fast and as far as they can to improve their missile rocket capability. They call it a space program. It's really the ability to put a dangerous weapon system on a rocket and get it as far as you can, as accurately as you can. I'm sure that they will continue to make progress for the next year and a half. I pray they don't get to the finish line. I know that Prime Minister Netanyahu is going to do everything he can to prevent that from happening, and I hope all of the nations in the region will see that it's not in their best interest to allow that to go forward, and they'll each use the tools they have, diplomatic and the like, to reduce the capacity of Iran to grow its program.
So I guess maybe you're saying that Americans should be praying very hard right now for peace and for Iran.
No, it's a different model, Cheryl.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. We had Iran as isolated as it had ever been. The number of friends and allies Iran had when we were in office was tiny. And now you have Europeans that want to travel there. You have Asian countries that want to travel there. The Gulf states are hedging their bets because they don't have confidence that America will be there to prevent them from being attacked from Iran. Now, this is 180 degrees from what we did, and it has increased the danger in the neighborhood exponentially and made our lives less secure here at home as well.
And it's also opening a door for some other country to lead on the global stage, which is exactly what China is pushing to do right now. Quickly, do you think Benjamin Netanyahu will launch preemptive strikes against Iran? And second off, could you talk to America's competition with China in terms of offering alternatives for the One Belt, One Road?
So as for the first matter, it is unknowable, but we need only take Prime Minister Netanyahu and his senior leadership team's word. They have said they're going to do whatever it is they need to do to ensure that Iran never has a fully functioning nuclear capable weapon. And I have every confidence they'll absolutely do that. There's no reason to believe Prime Minister Netanyahu has been determined in that regard, and there's no reason to think that will change. The second point is a much more complicated point. The Chinese Communist Party presents the single greatest external threat to the United States of America by far, and they're using, you referred to the Belt and Road Initiative, they're using every tool, including their economic power, to coerce and co-opt other nations. They're bribing senior elected officials, all the things that communist nations do. We have so many tools to counter that. We should absolutely be doing an awful lot more. The Biden administration has actually talked a pretty good game, but hasn't acted in a way that's consistent with what they've said is important.
Wow, it's looking more and more the longer I talk with you that the big hope for America's national secure future is the next presidential election, which kind of pivots into your new book, Never Give an Inch. What a great title. Was that yours?
It was. My son actually came up with the idea originally because he's heard me say it so many times. Sure, there's places we can always compromise, but on the things that really matter, the protection of human dignity and unborn lives, protecting America from its adversaries, the central idea of American freedom and liberty, on those things you just can't give an inch. Because once you've given an inch, the left, the progressives, the Marxists, you name them, the secular left, they will take a mile. And so these are places we need to stand on reason and righteousness and principle, and we can't afford to give an inch because it's too important for the next generation of Americans.
And your subtitle is Fighting for the America I Love. And as part of that, I just want to ask, because this is, of course, being talked about, did you write this book in part in lead up to an announced presidential run?
No, not at all. In fact, had I been more diligent and met my timeline, this book would have been out sometime last year. But
you should have hired an author to help you.
It took me a little bit longer. This book was written with the singular purpose of articulating what it is I tried to do as Secretary of State and CIA Director, how we did it, the things that worked and the things that didn't, and then trying to project forward, to talk to the American people seriously about the fact that we live in this most exceptional nation and how we can preserve and protect it. That's the reason I decided to write the book, and I hope people will enjoy reading Never Give an Inch. It's a fun read with some good stories that haven't been told, and I hope folks like it.
So you have first-person accounts in it?
Absolutely. There's some great stories, first-person stories. I did my best to be just as accurate and as detailed as I could in every place. And I think people will find some of the stories fun to read as well.
Wow, I can't wait. I can't wait to read it. It sounds like a remarkable book, and I do love the title, Never Give an Inch, Fighting for the America I Love. Mike Pompeo, thank you so much for your continued fight for America. I do hope you make a run for the presidency. That would be great. And
bless you. That's very kind. We're praying about it.
I know you are. You and your wife Susan. Best to you both in the new year, and thank you for being on Bold and Blunt.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Cheryl. So long.
Shaky national security times for America right now. Shaky foreign policy. And guess what? A couple more years to get through. Pray, America. That is our final hope. Praying for God's blessings and protections on America. I want to thank you for listening. I want to remind you, if you like Bold and Blunt, you can get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, the online platform for your faith-based podcasts, at washingtontimes.com, and guess what? Wherever you get fine podcasts, wherever fine podcasts are offered, just go to Google, type in Bold and Blunt podcasts, and there you have it. Appreciate your support. Tune in next time, and in the meanwhile, stay blunt, stay bold.